Cosatu is calling on Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to announce a package that relieves Eskom of up to 2/3 of its debt burden. Minister Godongwana is delivering his budget speech on Wednesday, and the Trade Union Federation says the declaration of a state of disaster needs to be accompanied by support that will enable Eskom to reduce rolling power cuts over the next 6 months. So let's discuss this even further now. We're joined by Sizwe Pamla from Cosatu. Sizwe, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. I think before we get into the expectations you have of Minister Godongwana this coming Wednesday during his budget speech delivery, let's reflect back and let me take it back to, let's say, 2014. How would you rate previous budget votes and speeches and how they reflect the true state of our affairs and as far as our economy is concerned?
Yeah, in fact, I'll take you back to 2009. If you remember the global crisis, the financial global crisis that became an economic crisis, South Africa responded very well. We remember all social partners met at NETLAC. We came out with a plan. That plan actually was implemented efficiently by government. So in 2009 and 2010, South African economy stabilized. It was not really highly affected by what had happened around the world. But from 2012 and 2013, then the issue of policy discourse ensued again with the introduction of the NDP. By 2014, with the midterm strategic framework that was put in place to implement parts of the NDP, we started to see the reimposition of the neoliberal policies of austerity cuts. The 2014 budget actually was the first austerity budget after 2010. That austerity budget, without making a lot of noise, they decided to not fill a vacant post in the public service. That was really the beginning of a slippery slope. As a result, the economy itself started to pay a price. For the last 7-8 years, this is what we've been subjected to, and the numbers are there. Unemployment at the time was sitting at 25%. Currently, it is sitting at 34%, but real unemployment, as defined as real unemployment, it is sitting at 43%. So you can see from 2014, when they started to impose these austerity budgets, things started to deteriorate. Economic has been stagnant since 2014. The budget has been getting worse and worse in terms of cutting allocations. So it's really something that we hope people have spent time going through the reports, their own reports, because they produce a lot of these reports. Statistics South Africa has got a lot of data that shows that since they adopted these policies, the economy has become worse. So we hope that this time around, they are going to admit that South Africa's main challenge is not the national debt, as people say. It's not. South Africa's main challenge is economic stagnation, because the debt to GDP ratio can easily be sorted out if you have a growing GDP. But if you have a shrinking GDP and you are forced to continue to borrow, then you have no option of actually addressing that imbalance. Yeah. So we need to have a budget that is meant to resuscitate the economy so that we can actually have a growing economy.
Fast forward to 2023, we still have socio-economic challenges, and you named them the 5 critical socio-economic challenges against which the Treasury's tax and spending policies must be measured. What are they?
Firstly, let's start with the energy crisis, because without energy, we won't have an economy. Without an economy, we won't have public services, but we will also will not have an economy that will create jobs. So the issue of energy crisis needs to be addressed. We have given support as a social partner. We have given President Ramaphosa support on his declaration of the state of disaster. As an alliance partner, we have also given him political endorsement. Why? Because we believe that he needs to be given all the tools that he needs to run, and to run fast, because we don't have the luxury of time. We rejected the 24 months time frame that was submitted by Eskom. We want him to do this in less than 12 months. So that is why we have given him that support. Now that he has outlined his plan, we want to hear from the budget, what is it that they are going to do in terms of developing a sustainable funding model, but also where are the resources going to come from and how much of these resources are going to be spent. We noted in the midterm budget policy statement last year, in October, that government is intending to take 50% of the Eskom debt into the national debt. We want the details of that to be explained and the timeframes, because we need to move on that front. Number two, one of the biggest challenges in South Africa is real unemployment. It's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. We have 70% of young people staying at home, half the adult working population unemployed. That is a big, big, big problem. So if we have a budget that is not people-centered, that is not really focused on looking after these people, then we have a big problem. So we have endorsed the presidential employment program that absorbed 500,000 young people over the last 2 years.
Right.
What we would like to see is the funding of that program to actually increase the intake to 1 million people. We are the most unequal country in the world, according to the World Bank. This is embarrassing, and it should be embarrassing to all of those people who are entrusted with the responsibility to lead, the policymakers and decision makers. So this budget, it should be a budget that acknowledges that we carry this embarrassing title. So we need to hear, how is government intending to actually close these inequalities? And we have small, medium enterprises, we have got township economy, we have rural economy. This budget needs to speak to how are those people who are actually trying, how are they going to receive support from the state?
Yeah.
We have talked about access to funding. We have talked about giving them subsidies to cushion them off from electricity prices and fuel prices. So this is a budget that should be people-centered, because government has tried the austerity and they've not worked.
Because if I may just jump in there, Sizwe, just speaking on, SMMEs, you make a very clear point that it's almost nearly impossible to build strong economies with government's current programs. You actually go a step further, saying that they're being emasculated by fiscal austerity. So the current conditions, the current programs with which government has implemented, even the red tape reduction strategy led by businessman Sipho Nkosi, him being, of course, announced by the president, it seems that SMMEs still are yet to see, clear relief from all these programs and strategies to assist SMMEs.
No, all of the strategies that have been announced over the number of years have actually not yielded any results. What is more disappointing about this is that, by the way, if you read the NDP 2030 vision document, it makes it very clear that big corporations and big companies are not necessarily going to be the ones that are going to create jobs in South Africa, but also around the world, because they are automating, they are mechanizing, and also that they are multinationals, which means that they will always look for areas where there's cheap labor and they can shift their operations there. So they are likely to also outsource. So that document says that small, medium enterprises are the ones that are still going to actually attract warm bodies, are going to employ someone who walks through that door. But the lack of support, I mean, we have talked about the state financial institution. 3 years ago, we were told that the Deputy Minister of Finance, the current Deputy Minister of Finance was serving, was conducting a research or an investigation on the feasibility of a state financial institution. The reason why we strongly do believe in a state bank is because look at the lending patterns of the South African private sector. The Competition Commission has made it very clear that they behave like cartels, they collude. But also in terms of their lending patterns, they are likely to give you money for consumption, but not for production. So we have consumption lending in South Africa that is a big problem. That's why people are highly indebted, because if you go and borrow 500,000 to buy a car, you are likely to be given that 500,000.
Right.
But if you ask for that same 500,000 for you to expand your small business or to fund your business, you are going to jump so many obstacles that at some point you will be fatigued. So this is what we need by a state bank, because a state bank is a bank that will actually be focused on productive lending for productive purposes, instead of actually burdening consumers and people with consumption debt. So this financial institution issue is long overdue, and we would like to hear in terms of, is there progress? If there's progress, when can we expect to have a financial institution of that nature, because it will be very critical in funding small medium enterprises.
Well, Cosatu spokesperson Sizwe Pamla, thank you so much for adding your voice to this. And I also have to just add, according to Cosatu's statement here, taking that conversation further, saying that for government to be successful, they also need to strengthen their relationship with public servants, which are found equally significant. We're talking here nurses that are, overwhelmed, short-staffed. We're talking members of the SAPS. We're talking teachers, home affairs staff, just to name some of those workers that want to assist government, have good intentions to be productive. But it seems the working environment and the circumstances they find themselves with, which they're working under, not allowing them to do so. All our thanks to Sizwe Pamla for his time.